Season 1 of The White Lotus focuses on the guests and staff of the titular resort in Hawaii. Despite the White Lotus resort being a dream vacation, the season opens 7 days in the future, revealing that for one unlucky person, the beach paradise would end in death. But let's start at the beginning as the newest guests arrive in Maui. Newlyweds Shane and Rachel Patton arrive at the White Lotus on their honeymoon. When the couple are told that the pineapple suite they reserved was double booked and are placed in a lesser, although still exquisite room, Shane takes this as a personal affront and confronts the hotel's manager Armand. Armand, tired of his treatment by entitled and pompous guests like Shane, decides to react passive-aggressively and constantly makes moves to sabotage Shane's honeymoon. Meanwhile, Shane can't drop his bitterness toward not receiving the room he wanted and lets this minor inconvenience completely sour his honeymoon with his new bride. Rachel isn't used to living a lavish lifestyle like Shane, and their new marriage is further fractured when Shane insists she quit the journalism career she was actually passionate about pursuing, as Shane makes more than enough money to support her financially. Things go from bad to worse for Rachel when Shane's mother Kitty arrives at the White Lotus to crash their honeymoon. As Rachel begins to fear she is now nothing more than a trophy wife, she confesses to Shane that she regrets marrying him. Nicole and Mark Mossbacher arrive at the White Lotus with their daughter Olivia, Olivia's friend Paula, and their socially awkward, technology-addicted son Quinn. Nicole is the powerful CFO of a major tech company, who carries the burden of being their family's primary moneymaker. Mark starts their vacation anxious about a potential cancer diagnosis, but is quickly given a clean bill of health by his doctor. Instead of accepting this good news and enjoying his vacation with his family, Mark allows his entire worldview to collapse upon the revelation that his own father was secretly gay and died of AIDS. Mark begins to feel self-conscious about his masculinity and becomes insecure about his wife being their family's main provider. To cope with these feelings, Mark begins drinking and becomes more adamant that his son Quinn put down his electronics and start acting more like a man. Eventually, Mark begins to be more open and vulnerable with Quinn. Maybe too vulnerable, as he reveals to his son that he had once had an affair. While Nicole was already aware of this past affair and the couple had moved on from it, this public revelation stirs up old wounds, and she rebukes Mark for telling their son, putting a further strain on their relationship. Meanwhile, Quinn begins taking his father's advice and tries to be more active while on vacation. When Olivia kicks him out of their hotel room, Quinn begins sleeping on the beach, where he meets a group of locals that invite him out to canoe. Olivia and Paula start their vacation by getting high off of drugs they smuggled into the resort. When they accidentally leave their stash on the beach, the hotel manager Armand finds it and takes the drugs for himself. Olivia also becomes jealous and even more entitled than usual when Paula begins a relationship with hotel employee Kai. Kai tells Paula about how the White Lotus was built on land stolen from his people. Paula convinces Kai to break into the Mossbacher's hotel room and steal Nicole's $75,000 necklace, a gift from Mark in an attempt to make up for his affair. Unfortunately for Kai, the pressure of Nicole holding her family together finally comes to a breaking point, and she leaves the family scuba diving trip early. Mark follows Nicole to comfort her, and the two catch Kai stealing the necklace. Mark steps in to protect Nicole, and Kai beats him up before escaping. Having seemingly put his life in danger to protect his wife, Mark finally earns the respect of his family. Tanya McQuad is an eccentric woman grieving the death of her mother, who has come to Hawaii to spread her ashes. When her attempts to schedule a massage fail due to the spa being fully booked, Tanya befriends and pays the spa's manager Belinda to lead her in a ceremonial chant. Tanya is so happy with the results that she offers to fund Belinda's own wellness business. For Belinda, this is a life-changing offer. For the wealthy and aloof Tanya, this was just another potential business venture that she pays little mind to. This power imbalance between the two women quickly begins to weigh on Belinda. When Tanya sets sail on a boat to spread her mother's ashes at sea, Armand spitefully tricks Shane and Rachel to accompany her under the guise of a romantic dinner date. Instead, they are forced to comfort the eccentric stranger. Tanya then meets a fellow guest named Greg, who was diagnosed with a terminal illness. As Tanya and Greg grow closer together, Tanya pays even less attention to Belinda. Greg helps Tanya grieve the loss of her mother, and the two decide to start dating. Meanwhile, Armand begins to crack under the pressure of catering to the entitled whims of the White Lotus guests. Eventually, he breaks his sobriety and begins drinking and abusing the drugs he stole from Olivia and Paula. His exceedingly reckless behavior eventually leads him to supplying drugs to a younger hotel employee named Dylan. When Shane catches Armand and Dylan doing drugs and having sex, he uses the opportunity to blackmail Armand into finally giving him the pineapple suite. When Shane hears about the Mossbacher robbery, he informs his travel agent of the various problems that have plagued him throughout his stay at the White Lotus, leading Armand to being fired. After a final workday filled with heavy drinking and drug use, Armand sneaks into Shane's hotel room for revenge, defecating in Shane's suitcase. When Shane enters his room and detects an intruder, he arms himself with a knife and inadvertently stabs Armand, killing him. As the season comes to a close, Armand's body is loaded onto a plane flying out of Hawaii. Tanya and Greg decide to continue their relationship while Shane and Rachel reconcile and depart the island together. The Mossbachers prepare to leave, finally united as a family, but Quinn decides to ditch them all at the last second to stay on the island and join his new local friends as they take their canoe out to sea. And as for the staff of the White Lotus, Armand is dead, Kai is caught by the authorities and arrested, and Belinda is given a large stack of cash but otherwise abandoned by Tanya, prompting her to lose confidence in her business plans. The wealthy guests had come and gone, and it was the White Lotus staff who were left behind to deal with the fallout. Season 2 of The White Lotus focuses on the guests and staff of the titular resort in Taormina, Sicily. Despite the White Lotus resort being a dream vacation, the season opens 7 days in the future, revealing that for some unfortunate guests, the Italian getaway would end in death. But let's start at the beginning as the newest guests arrive in Sicily. Tanya McQuad arrives at the White Lotus on vacation with her new husband Greg. Greg is frustrated that Tanya has brought her young assistant Portia along with her, and the tension in their relationship doesn't end there. Greg is temperamental for the duration of his stay at the White Lotus, and constantly takes secret calls that he insisted Tanya are for work. As Greg repeatedly reminds Tanya he is nowhere near as wealthy as her, and due to their prenup he still needs to work. And that work eventually calls him back to America, leaving Tanya and Portia alone in Sicily. Also checking into the White Lotus is Hollywood producer Dominic Grasso, his sleazy widower father Bert, and his nice guy Stanford grad son Albie. The DeGrasso trio are in Italy to reconnect with their familial roots and explore their homeland. Originally, Dominic's wife and daughter were supposed to accompany the family on their trip, but they decided to stay home in America after discovering Dominic's repeated infidelities. Upon first arriving in Sicily, Dominic hires local sex workers Lucia and her friend Mia to stay with him in secret. Eventually, Dominic feels guilty over his actions and breaks off his arrangement with the women in the hopes of bettering himself and winning his wife back. Although their sexual arrangement with Dominic comes to an end, he does still allow Lucia and Mia to use his guest access to the hotel, greatly frustrating the short-tempered hotel manager Valentina. Lucia teaches her friend Mia about the perks of sex work, then prows the hotel guests for a new potential client. Meanwhile, Mia has big dreams of being a professional singer, and sets her sights on charming the hotel's lounge pianist Giuseppe in the hopes that he can secure her a regular singing gig at the White Lotus. Mia offers to have sex with Giuseppe to earn his favor, but when he takes some of Lucia's pills that he assumes are Viagra, he instead collapses and is hospitalized. With Giuseppe gone, Mia is able to convince Valentina to allow her to fill in during his absence. Meanwhile, Valentina becomes romantically obsessed with the receptionist Isabella. When Isabella informs Valentina that she is engaged to fellow receptionist Rocco, Valentina is devastated. Mia takes this opportunity to seduce Valentina as further thanks for the singing gig. When Giuseppe returns from the hospital, Valentina fires him and gives Mia the full-time position. Other new guests at the White Lotus include Ethan and Harper Spiller, on vacation with Ethan's college roommate Cameron Sullivan and his wife Daphne. Ethan is newly wealthy after selling his tech company, and Harper is suspicious that the brash Cameron has only re-entered Ethan's life to take advantage of his newfound riches. Harper is put off by Cameron and Daphne's seemingly out of touch and privileged lives, and their constant public displays of affection. This is in stark contrast to her relationship with Ethan, who seems to have lost interest in Harper romantically. Harper's reservations about Cameron are seemingly confirmed when Daphne takes her on an overnight girls' trip. Cameron pitches Ethan to invest in his company, then buys Lucia and Mia's services for a night of drugs and sex. Although Ethan refuses to have sex with Mia, he does keep the events of his night with Cameron a secret from Harper upon her return. When Harper finds Cameron's condom wrapper in their room, she assumes Ethan is lying to her and has cheated on her. Having actually grown close to Daphne, Harper vents her frustrations to her new friend. Daphne confesses to knowing about Cameron's infidelities, but admits to having affairs of her own to cope, and even implies that one of their kids was secretly fathered by her trainer. Ethan then becomes paranoid that Harper secretly cheated on him with Cameron. Harper confesses to drunkenly kissing Cameron, but Ethan believes they went even further. Ethan then confronts Cameron before telling Daphne of his suspicions. Daphne seems oddly fine with this revelation, before inviting him to explore a nearby island. Upon Ethan's return from his mystery trip with Daphne, he heads to his hotel room where he finally initiates sex with Harper. Meanwhile, Albie begins a brief relationship with Portia, but things fizzle out when she meets the much more exciting and charismatic Jack. Albie then meets and pursues a relationship with Lucia, unaware that his father had slept with her just a few days earlier. Dominic tries to dissuade Albie from seeing Lucia, but has no way of doing so that wouldn't reveal his own indiscretions. As Albie and Lucia grow closer, Lucia confides in Albie that she owes a lot of money to a man named Alessio. Albie, thinking Lucia's feelings for him are genuine and that they could continue their relationship in Los Angeles, makes a proposition to his father. If Dominic agrees to pay Lucia 50,000 euros, then Albie would tell his mother how remorseful and changed Dominic was in an effort to win her back. Dominic reluctantly pays Lucia the money, but Albie is disappointed to discover that she had scammed him. Meanwhile, the lonely Tanya is befriended by a wealthy British man named Quentin, who had inherited a home from his father in Palermo. Quentin and his eccentric friends immediately take Tanya under their wing to show her a good time in the hopes of lifting her spirits. Portia tags along with her boss and her new friends, and Jack is revealed to be Quentin's nephew. As Tanya confides in Quentin about her struggles with Greg, he confides in Tanya about his own experiences with heartbreak. He had only been in love once in his life, decades prior to a cowboy he met in America who couldn't love him back because he was straight. Tanya soon begins to grow suspicious of her new friends. First, she catches the supposed relatives Quentin and Jack having sex. Then, during a massive party thrown by Quentin, she discovers from photographs that Greg was the cowboy from Quentin's story. Despite Tanya's reservations, she ends up being seduced by Quentin's young and attractive cocaine dealer. While this is happening, Jack takes Portia for a night out. As Portia insists on returning to her boss, a drunken Jack confesses that he had taken her out as a distraction, and that Quentin wasn't his uncle, but instead a wealthy man who had saved him from a very bad situation in exchange for sex. Portia calls Tanya to warn her about their precarious situation, but it's too late. Jack takes Portia's phone and keeps her away from Tanya, while Tanya is trapped on a yacht with Quentin and all of his friends. Quentin needs money to help pay for the upkeep of his estate, and is working with Greg to kill Tanya and steal her inheritance. Tanya manages to find a gun in the cocaine dealer's bag, opening fire on her would-be captors. After murdering Quentin and his associates, Tanya attempts to jump in the dinghy, which could drive her to safety. Unfortunately, she hits her head and drowns. Jack, feeling remorse over his involvement in the murder plot, takes Portia to the airport and warns her of the danger she is in. As the season comes to a close, Cameron and Daphne remain together in their open relationship, Harper and Ethan have reconciled, Dominic is given new hope in his marriage despite his still wandering eye, Albie and Portia reconnect after their terrible experiences in Sicily, and Lucia and Mia walk off into the sunset, having successfully acquired the money and job they were after.